The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello everyone, good morning, good evening or good afternoon, depending on where you are attending and watching this session from today. So today we're going to be covering the Catalyst marketing session number 2. We're going to try to take maybe 15 to 20 minutes to cover all the content, and then we're going to open the floor for any questions and answers you might have. So just to let you know, there's 2 ways that you can do that today. I usually always go through these housekeeping items at the very start of the session. So there's either a button that you can click that has a hand, and I can unmute you at the end of the session, or if we are going through a particular slide and you think of a question, you can type that question and I can address it at the end of the webinar. Now, I just try to run through all of the content so that it's all covered, and then we can go in the questions and answers at the very end. So if anyone needs to drop, you still being able to have all of the information that you need. Now, we always record these sessions and we put them available online. So you do have your available resources pages where you have the Catalyst marketing sessions. But let's say if you do want to go and catch up with what was shared at the Catalyst logistics, then you can also go there. Or if anyone in your team is looking to get Curate FX training or further information, all of that is open. You'll be able to go to your Confluence homepage and click on a direct page here. And let's say if someone hasn't signed up to Confluence that you think that might benefit from this information, this page is actually public to anyone. So that anyone, let's say if you're looping in someone from your own marketing team that doesn't necessarily need to be on the project, they can also come and check these particular content out. So just as a reminder, your Catalyst pages now are ready. So you can just go to our tmforum.org or to our Digital Transformation World page and just click on your particular project. It will take you to your particular web page. Once you share that page online, it will bring you these Catalyst program sub. So it's great for you to share it with your team so that they can be sharing it over on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, so forth, depending on your favorite platform. Now, make sure that you're sharing this content. Is a great way and a very easy way for you to be marketing your Catalyst project that doesn't take too much of the time. So one of the things that you should be doing, anyone that participates on your Catalyst, not just from a company perspective, but actually each of those individuals, if they do have a presence on any of the social platforms, it's really great for them to be promoting it that way. It can be quite an effective way of marketing your project. So I'm just going to start today with a reminder of your Marketing Catalyst Toolkit. I know that we've already covered these a little bit more in detail, but it's just as a reminder that you are meant to be using the event presentation template on all presentations that you'll be giving at the event. And that is just to stay within our other branding guidelines. So anything that happens at the event, everyone uses that particular template. And with that, what I would like to cover with you today is the event presentations that your team needs to create for the show. We already covered these with your project leaders last week, and as your marketing lead, and especially if you have any sort of marketing background or if you're bringing someone with marketing knowledge, it's really important that for some of these presentation types that you are getting involved in how those are taking shape. So for the event, we usually suggest for the teams to create 3 different types of presentations. Now, they're not mandatory, but it's just what we've had a feedback there over the years that's just worked with the Catalysts. And it just gives you and your team just a base to start creating that content. So those 3 types of presentations, we usually call it the elevator pitch, which is the shortest one. You then move to a slightly longer one where they would call the mid-presentation or theatre presentation if you choose to do a classic presentation at the theatre. And then we have the third one, which is the full story and the lengthiest of them all. So I'm going to start with the elevator pitch, and this particular presentation is the one that we really ask for the marketing leads to really give input and to make sure that they helping the project leader and the team creating that content. Now with Catalyst, and as observed, you are working on a great solution, and it can be easy to get a little bit caught up on that solution, how great it is, and how you need to give all the detail. But usually if you think when attendees approach your stand, especially it's a very busy time, such as the lunch time or the break time, and it's really important that you have a presentation or a piece of content that's very snappy, it's very quick to grab that attendee. They will be busy with other catalysts, with other content happening around the show floor. So it's really important that you do have a piece of content that just grabs their attention. And the objective of the elevator pitch is not that you give the end-to-end solution or overview of the project there and then in this very short presentation, but it's really to grab their attention so that they stay. And for two reasons. It will help you and your team to identify the attendees that actually have an interest in your topic versus those that don't have an interest. So therefore, there's not a lot of interest from your part as well to spend a lot of time giving them the solution if they're not going to be interested. But also, you will give them some content so that the person goes, oh, this is really great, I really want to hear more. So we usually suggest for this elevator pitch not to be more than 5 minutes. Personally, I suggest that they should really be between 2 to 3 minutes. And I usually suggest that within the two screens that the team will have at the show, that these presentations are always up and running in one of the screens. Now, if you only have 3 to 5 minutes, usually we'll say 5 to 8 slides. Usually I do suggest a 1 minute, one slide rule, but with the elevator pitch, because you might have the different brands, you might have more imagery, it's okay to have another 1 or 2 slides extra if they're more visual content. Now, the content here really needs to be really concise. It really needs to get to the point. It needs to be less technical with less buzzwords, but very less technical from that perspective. It's really meant to be that hook pitch, as I said before, so they get taken to the show the in-depth solution. As the marketing lead, this is where you will need to come as a help to your team. It's help to develop that imagery or content that's easy to explain the project in this format. Your team will be really busy with the technical content, so this will be, as a marketing lead, it will be really great for you to help your team out. Now, if you do want to contact our team for marketing leads for some extra ideas, their contacts will be at the end of this session on the slide deck, and you can feel free to reach out to them to pick their brain on anything extra that you might do. Now, one of the things I do usually suggest is that, let's say, if you actually don't come from a marketing background, you just landed this task within your team of being the marketing lead, do go back to your own marketing team on your organization, or maybe to a marketing contact within the overall Catalyst team, where they actually help you shape that particular content. Within your overall Catalyst team, there should be someone that will be able to connect you to someone that has great product and marketing content that's really able to bridge that particular language that you'll require. So let's say great times, the attendee came to your booth, they saw your elevator pitch, they saw this is really great, I really want to know more. And then you are ready to take them through a further presentation with them or a further demo. So here's where you can have then the two options to do two different presentations. So the first one is what I call the meet presentation. We usually say that you can develop this presentation with a few slides of difference that can fill two purposes. So your Catalyst theatre presentation, if you choose to go with a classic presentation where you just stand up and you give your presentation to the audience, then this is actually a very similar type of content. So you can just develop it and just perhaps take 1 or 2 slides out. Now, with the theatre, if you do choose to utilize this presentation content in 2 ways. The only thing that I would suggest is that when your team is at the theatre and when you are helping your team create the content that you're developing for this platform, the objective of the theatre, as I've mentioned before, is not that you're giving the end-to-end solution. Going to the theatre is to promote your Catalyst, to promote what your team is doing, but really to get those attendees to come for a one-to-one conversation with your particular team. Now, if you are in the Catalyst kiosk, this is slightly different. You do want to run a very similar content, but you do want to deliver exactly what it is that you've achieved during the Catalyst. Now, the reason that we usually suggest when the attendee comes to the booth that this presentation really shouldn't be more than 20 minutes, I personally actually usually always downsize the time, always make it to 10 or 15. And it's just that, that's the amount of time that someone will have to spend time with your Catalyst team. If you develop content that's longer, you won't be giving the attendee the key messages. And this is very, very important. Catalyst projects sometimes get a little bit stuck in trying to detail all the use cases and all the detail that they've done in the Catalyst, and they actually end up missing out. The attendee might not have the time to absorb all of this information. So it's really important that you really decide as a team what are the key messaging that you want to give to those attendees that only have 10 to 20 minutes to speak to you. So this particular content, it should give a good overview of the Catalyst from the inception to the solution. And here's where you can start going a little bit into a brief technical overview. If you do have any helpful architecture diagrams, this is a good presentation to start adding them on. Make sure that if you have your CurateFX model, that your team is linking to that model, as it gives a really good overview of the project. And let's say if you're using anything such as APIs, CurateFX, so forth, that you're using those logos. Now, if the team does have time, this is something that I usually suggest. You can create this particular slide deck, but do be aware that you're going to have different users coming to your particular Catalyst kiosk. So at just a very high level, you might have someone that's from product development or from marketing. You might have someone that's from the technical side, or you have someone that's more at C-level. And actually, these different users will need to have the content adapted to them if you really want to have a very successful show. So in addition of developing this visual imagery to go with what you're delivering on the booth, it is really important that those that will be staffing the Catalyst kiosk, that they are run through of the different messaging and how these different audiences, the language that you should be using. Now, if the team doesn't have a lot of time, then that's absolutely fine. Just make sure that the key areas are decided in terms of messaging. But if you do have time and if you can engage other marketing resources within your Catalyst team, so let's say if you are the marketing lead and you've been able to be put in contact with leads of each of the organizations that are participating and you are being able to have meetings with them, this is a really good resource to ask them to maybe help you with that language. And for the theatre, do make sure that you do remember that this is the audience. So don't put a lot of wording on those particular slides. More imagery. Do remember that usually, if someone is watching a presentation, they will either be reading your slides or they will be listening to your audio content. So I still see many catalysts turning up with 20 slides worth of quite heavy written content. And unfortunately, as humans, we can only engage with either one or the other type of content. So just make sure that that's being taken into account. I know that sometimes you don't want to feel like you're missing anything being said, but by perhaps overloading the attendee with information, you might actually get less out of them. This is one of the types of the presentation. So the very last one is the full story. And this could be something that the team might jump straight from the elevator pitch. Now, the full story, I usually also suggest if the team doesn't have a lot of time to perhaps use this slide deck in two different ways. One is really if someone comes to your kiosk and after the elevator pitch, they're really the audience member that you want to engage with and they're very, very interested in learning more and they have plenty of time to be taken through the end-to-end solution. Personally, I suggest when you're speaking to your project leader, and you're doing those Catalyst kiosks rosters, you'll have two screens. And usually I advise for someone to be with a third laptop connected to the Wi-Fi. So if you are very, very busy and someone really comes through that's very interested in that full story, that actually you can perhaps just have the one-to-one conversation with that person whilst enabling the rest of the team to reach out to further members of the audience. Now, obviously, again, just choose the messaging. If someone does come through to you and they do have an half an hour to spend with the Catalyst, what are the key items that you want to cover during that full story presentation? And it should really give a good overview of the overall Catalyst. It should have all of the relevant architectures and the technical content. And for this particular slide deck, there's also another use that I usually suggest for the team to have that can be incredibly helpful and it will support your team members that will be on the ground on that Catalyst kiosk. So you can use these as your full story presentation, but also you should have either way. You can either utilize and build on from this content, or you can develop an additional slide deck. It's really up to the team on how they wish to do that. But you should have a slide deck that is very concise and it has all the different topics that your team has covered. So for example, you decide what the team believes that should be the key areas of messaging. But at the show, it could be very well that someone will turn up with a very specific interest in a particular use case, in a particular solution. And what it's really good that your team on the ground has the tools to do is to be able to have a presentation that's very easy for them to go, oh, okay, you want to learn about this particular topic, and for them to jump to that section very easily within a slide deck and be able to take them through that particular detailed content. So usually I say to just go over with the team and all the materials that have been developed, just ensure that that's been really well and clearly marked within the presentation, so that the team is able to jump over that specific content back and forth if people do want to go into detail. Now, something that's also very important for the team just to take note, and this is just as a little bit of advice, the team will be able to come on Monday, the day before the show, between 1 and 7 p.m. just to check the Catalyst area and to test the equipment. This is a really valuable time, especially if most of your teams have been working remotely for the past few months, to get them together and to run them through and do dry runs. I'm aware that the teams usually do dry runs the week before over the phone, but it's invaluable having the opportunity to do that face-to-face, especially on those elevator pitches, especially on those of your team members that might not be as comfortable or might not have attended shows and done demos that way. Ensuring that you delivering this training to the team, or ensuring that your project leader is doing that, or working together in partnership with them, will really ensure that when you are in at the show, that you're really benefiting the most and that your team is really prepared and that they have a really slick presentation and a really slick demo. And that will mean that you'll have more interested people in your Catalyst, and that people will see your particular Catalyst as a really successful. Communication and how you presented that information is very key. You might have the best Catalyst, you might be absolutely changing the industry, but if your team fails to pass that message, or if they fail to communicate that in a clear and concise manner, you might miss showcasing the great solution that's been developed. So with that will be all that we really wanted to cover today for the events presentations. That will be something that you really will start working with your team if they haven't yet over the next week or so. Don't leave it for last minute. I also know many Catalysts that were preparing their presentations on the flight, and that means that if your team is still doing that, the remainder of those that will be in the kiosk do not have the information themselves to prepare. So with that, I would like to move on to the Catalyst Virtual Show Bag. I'm aware that we already covered these in some detail 2 weeks ago, but I want to go a little bit more in depth. So in the Catalyst areas, we don't allow any flyers on the Catalyst kiosks. And that's for a variety of reasons. First, there's usually quite a high amount of different companies per Catalyst. So if everyone wants to bring one particular flyer, there will just be an immense amount of paper, but also we just find that a lot of attendees will pick up that paper and you'll find them somewhere else in the show, and there's very few of them they usually collect and really engage with our content. So as a solution, what the forum does for you is we create you an online virtual show bag. And the first step of this is that you should be training your team that you'll have one scanner and that someone in your team at all times needs to be scanning any delegate that comes to your kiosk, so that A, you obtain the data, but B, so that we can send them the virtual show bag. A few days after, our team will reach out to all of those attendees that came to your kiosk, and we will distribute the information about your catalyst, and actually enhances a little bit the cycle of the exposure of your catalyst, because they've been at the show. A few days later, they will actually receive your catalyst virtual show bag, and they will be able to cover the content. Now, you can add as many catalyst related content as you would like. So let's say if you're doing your flyer for the catalyst, add that. If you decide to do a white paper, if you want to add 2 or 3 presentations, you can add that. Each organization can only add 1 piece of collateral per company. Now, do remember, if you were someone attending a show and you were taking a catalyst virtual show back afterwards, and you're just bombarded with 20 or 30 pieces of material, most likely you're not going to engage with any. So do also remember that quantity over quality is very important on this show bag. And one of the things that I suggest is when you do go through your catalyst flyer, that you can really put quite a lot of the key messaging and the key contacts, and if they want to find extra additional items, to really utilize that resource rather than just adding different presentations, different videos, and so forth. The team does need to upload all of this content as per the project plan the Wednesday before the show. Any content that doesn't get uploaded by the Wednesday, we will be unable to ensure that that's ready to send by the end of the show. So do bear in mind, we usually send all the Catalyst virtual showbacks at the same time. And in previous years, teams have been delayed in providing us that content, and it has meant that we've delayed sending the content to all the teams. So this year we will be changing that. If there's no content uploaded by the Wednesday prior to the show, it just won't be included, as not to impact the Catalyst teams that have provided us content on time. And I think that we already covered these. So just so you know, these slides will be available online. So if you just want to pass it to a team member to go through, that'll be fantastic. And then just as a reminder as well, we covered it last 2 weeks ago, the Catalyst Marketing Flyer. And here it's actually what I'd mentioned before. It's a great way. You can actually turn this flyer into maybe 1 to 2 pages. You can have the contacts for each of the organizations. Let's say if the organization has a flyer or a product that they want to actually themselves download, rather than maybe adding different documentation on the second part, you can maybe do a table, or you can maybe list each of the companies and kind of do a direct link to what they would like to promote. And that makes the content much more dynamic, rather than having 5 or 6 different documents that the person has to scroll through. And as we covered these before, I'm not going to go into further detail. You can watch the session 1 that we covered 2 weeks ago. And if you do have any questions, you can reach out to me or to my colleague Tandy to help you building this particular data sheet. Now, just as a reminder, and this was the recap of the theatre and video from 2 weeks ago, and the Catalyst Theatre, you should be choosing between the different presentations. I know that the teams had a deadline of last Thursday to provide that content. I know some of you were away on Easter holidays or different public holidays around the world, and you asked us for a few extra days, which is fine, but just make sure that you're sending us that information to us by these weeks so that our team can help you create this content. Now, the Catalyst Theatre will be recorded in its entirety for your Catalyst video, replacing the previous video that we used to record for you. However, and I also had pointed these out to the project leaders, with video content, usually the first few minutes are really important. A lot of the folk sometimes don't engage with video content for more than a few minutes. Some will stay for the duration of your video content, but some others, that is just how we observed that people interact with video content. So therefore, it's really important that whichever presentation that you're doing, that you just give a really quick 3 to 5 minute overview, so that when it gets recorded, or even for those attendees that are attending, that they really understand what it is that you're going to cover and who was involved and what it was that you're trying to achieve. And that will give them a hook to stay at the theatre and to continue watching that video after the show. Your project leader and yourself, you should be selecting 2 to 3 speakers depending on the type. And now just a reminder, additional to last year we just used to do one video. This year we're actually doing the 2 video recordings. So we're recording that first video that will be recorded in its entirety, but we're really suggesting that for you to focus on the first 5 minutes of content. And then you'll also have interviews directly at your Catalyst kiosk. And then over the next week or so, our video team will be reaching out with some slots for you. Now, I've just left this slide. I'm not going to go through into much detail. If you are thinking of doing the classic presentation, I usually really advise you to just check this particular presentation out, especially if the person that you're choosing that's creating that slide deck or that are speaking, if they haven't done that many presentations, whilst you might seem very straightforward, it's really important that it just takes a few of these items into account. And we are getting towards the very end of the session. So if you do have any questions or anything you would like to ask, you can start thinking of those and sending those through now. And just as a reminder, you should be working on your marketing plan with your team. So if you want to do press releases, social media, now over the next 2 to 3 weeks, especially as the event is coming up, making sure that you're telling your audiences that you will be at the show, that you're doing this catalyst, and making sure that your team is also at the forefront of what they're promoting. If you find that your technical team is getting really busy, just ask them to speak to their marketing leads within their organizations, and they usually are able to provide you those to you and able to reach out to those teams for further enhancement. If you think that you have 5 or 6 different organizations, if you promote your catalyst within the audiences of those 6 organizations, just think of the wider audience that you will be reaching. You'll be gaining from everyone promoting each other, and especially with your champion as well. I know sometimes larger organizations can have a little bit more of a PR veto, but also if you can speak to them and see if they can promote the catalyst, that could be very beneficial to all of you. And with that, we've reached the very end of our session today. So just as a reminder, we do have all of the quick links and the advice on how to get yourself registered and travel links for the event. And you can go and download this particular slide deck or just visit it on that resource center. And you can follow any of the links on this presentation. And with that, we've reached the very end of our session today. We are 3 weeks away from Nice, which can be a little bit daunting for some of you, but we obviously are here to help. So if you do have any questions, do make sure that you're reaching out to us. And with that, we're reaching towards the end. I'm not seeing any questions coming through, so I'm just going to give it another minute or so. Now, so we just had a request to share the expo hours. So we have shared the expo hours on the logistics webinar. So if you follow your through your Confluence Center through your Confluence space into the information page, and you go to the logistics, actually all of the different presentation slides or even the latest, they all have the expo hours. They all go into detail about the action day. You don't even need to go and watch the webinar itself. You can just click on the presentation, download the presentation, and is the second or third slide on those slide decks. So if any of you are wondering about that more logistic part of your catalyst, do feel free to go to the logistics presentation. And if your particular project leader hasn't shared that content with you, it has been shared with them. So just make sure that you're reminding them to make sure that they're distributing that to the team. So thank you for that question. I'm assuming that if you are asking, the folk will be asking too. Great, so I'm not seeing any other questions coming through. So also, just as a reminder, the session that we're running in the afternoon, it's exactly the same content, just for that time zone. So don't feel that you need to attend that one too. But if you do think that anyone in your team will benefit from this session, the session will also be not only able to join today at 4 p.m. UK time, but you'll also be able to watch it on demand afterwards. So with that, I would really like you to thank you for your time. I'm really looking forward to seeing you all in Nice. Take care and have a rest of a great week.